everybody. Welcome to the Hidden Gems podcast. This is the podcast where we like to look at a streaming service and give you some hidden gems of that streaming service, not the obvious picks, and talk about them. And it's just so much fun. And I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Ryan is here.
Hey, Rachel. It's so great to be back with you once again. And I was actually messaging you back and forth about this, but it's something that I didn't realize until just today. We just crossed a year of doing this.
Unbelievable.
Like March 17th was our first Disney Plus episode, and just thinking back on all of the stuff that has happened, not just in 2020, but just like all the movies we've talked about, all the streaming services we've talked about. I've discovered streaming services that I had no idea were even a thing, but it was to this. So
We've done 400 recommendations, and that's crazy.
And a lot more to go.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I just wanted to say thank you, because my personal channel has just exploded, and it's primarily, or not primarily, but one of the reasons why is because I've been on this podcast with you, and I've been exposed to your viewers, and it's just been awesome. So I thank you, and I look forward to doing this for another year or even another 5 years. I'm down for this for the long haul.
Yeah, well, we've had a great time. I mean, I thought it was just going to be something we'd do for a couple of weeks because we were all just Disney Plus binging, and we
this will be over in a couple of weeks.
I remember when EMC, I think it was, announced that they were closing for between 2 and 6 weeks is what they had originally said. And I was like, that's crazy. 6 weeks? What? No way.
Well,
yeah. Yeah. So I've been so grateful. It's been a great blessing in my life, and helped me get through this crazy time to have something to look forward to every Monday or Tuesday or whenever we get around to filming it. And figuring out all these streaming services. We've done a bunch, and today we're doing one we've only ever done one other time, believe it or not.
Yeah, we're talking about the Hoopla behind, Hoopla.
Yeah.
Forgive my bad puns, but there we go. This is a streaming service that is kind of like Canopy in that it's secretly one of the very best that no one ever really thinks about. Mm-hmm. It's free. All you need to use is a library card in order to get it, but you have access to so much. I was going through it just today, and I was there I have a runoff. I have 20 choices I could use, and it'd just be like, God, I have so much that I can make 5 top 5 lists if I really wanted to.
It's my favorite price, free $99.
There you go.
Yeah, really. I had the same experience. I was looking through and I was just like, oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good one. And I don't know if it's just because the other ones we've sort of picked over a little bit more, and this one we've only done one. And so maybe that's part of the reason why there seemed to be so much. But it really was impressive.
Yeah, and I had seen, and Hoopla has a bit of an advantage too, because it doesn't just do movies and TV. It does audiobooks and ebooks and comics, and just 90% of the comics that I've read in my life have been on Hoopla. So so this is a very underrated service in that you can get so much with just giving your library card information, which they give out for free anyway.
We've done Canopy we've done Canopy 4 times. So what do you think of the main difference between Canopy and Hoopla?
Well, in terms of Canopy and Hoopla, I hate using the word mainstream because it gets used this is a mainstream film. I don't know, it just seems so clerical to me. But Hoopla feels a lot more mainstream, and Canopy is more niche. When you go to Canopy, you're looking for older movies that aren't Citizen Kane, Lawrence of Arabia, stuff like that. International films by female directors or directors in the LGBT community, so on and so forth. If you're going to Hoopla, that's more stuff you would recognize. But Canopy is more this is another term I hate, but it's more challenging stuff.
Yeah, it's more prestige kind of fare.
Exactly. And even then, looking through Canopy just recently, they've added some more mainstream fare. Like they just had AI, artificial intelligence, on there, which I had no idea that they would ever add anything related to Spielberg on there, but
Hmm.
there it is.
Yeah.
And then they had the Beaver on there with Mel Gibson. And I'm like, considering who Mel Gibson is, I'm surprised they would let him 25 feet near that streaming service, but that's another conversation for another time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. And a lot of times that you can, if they're not carrying either of these services, if you can find a friend and you can split the borrows that you can do, because they give you 10 on Canopy, right? And was it 8 on Hoopla that
No,
you
no,
have?
it was 20.
Oh,
It
20.
there's a certain like there's things called fast borrows for like newer material. You get 4, and then
Okay.
for like stuff for like the rest, it's 20, and that spreads across movies, TV, comics, ebooks, so on and so forth.
Yeah, so let us know which one you prefer, is Canopy or Hoopla. We'd love to hear in the comments section. But let's dive into our recommendations this week. So my first recommendation, I feel like I've done it before, but I couldn't find it anywhere. So forgive me if this is a repeat. But I had to go with The Secret of Kells. And this is the first film from Tom Moore, who, of course, everyone who follows my channel knows I adore. I got to interview him, and I love him and his work. I loved Song of the Sea so much. It was the first movie that ever made me cry on YouTube when I was doing my review. And, and then I also love Wolfwalkers. It was my favorite film last year. This is his first one, The Secret of the Kells. It's about a little boy named Brendan who it lives in this Viking town, and there's this book of the Kells, and it has all these legends, and there's the legend of the forest, and he kind of gets involved in this sort of quest into the forest, and there's this spirit that is the spirit of the forest that's there as well, and I just love it. I think it's beautiful, and I think that it's probably my least favorite of the 3, but I just love all 3 so much. And so if you haven't had a chance to see the Irish folklore trilogy by Tom Moore and Cartoon Saloon, you really should check it out. It's great.
Yeah, I was going to say this sounds Irish.
Yes, yeah, it's the Irish trilogy that he has was Secret of Kells, and Song of the Sea, Wolfwalkers. And you got Brendan Gleeson doing one of the voices in here, and he's also in Song of the Sea, and he's great.
Yeah, I love Brandon Gleeson. He was Knuckles McGinty in Paddington too.
Oh, yeah, I know. It's so good. I love him in that. And it has beautiful music by this Irish band called Kia. And they are in all 3 of the movies. And the music is done by Bruno Kailus. I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name. Anyway, really great. And I just love the animation is so beautiful. It's a 2D animation. So I think that I think Song of the Sea is still my favorite. I think the Wolfwalkers is probably the best, but I have more of an emotional connection to Song of the Sea. So they're all great though. Very, very, very good.
In 2016, I had the privilege of traveling to Ireland, and
Oh,
it was
great.
it's one of the most beautiful places on earth. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care what anyone says. Just
Mm-hmm.
rolling hills of just green as far as the eye can see. Very overcast, so this Florida boy was like, "Where's the sun? Has the sun disappeared? Where did it go?" But you get used to it after a while. But I I went on a school trip, a college trip, and I got to see some of the darker sides of Ireland, is specifically Derry and Londonderry, and that's a very complicated hornet's nest. But let's just say Londonderry is Protestant and Derry is Catholic, and they hate each other. I'll just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to see the site of Bloody Sunday, which is a very dark day in their history. If you want to know more about it, like listen to the U2 song Sunday Bloody Sunday. That's what they base that song off of. But I also got to travel to Dublin, which is a beautiful city, and Galway as well, which is the industrial heart of it. I could go on talking about my Ireland trip for days because it was wonderful.
That's awesome.
But that'll be another story for
Yeah.
another time.
Well, very cool. Well, what is your first recommendation?
So my first recommendation, this is our trademark hard lefts, going from a Irish animated film to a war film starring Clint Eastwood and Richard Burton. This is called Where Eagles Dare, and this is a World War II movie that definitely does not get talked about because I think World War II in terms of movies has been done a lot, and there's a lot of source material there. You could go like the serious route, like Schindler's List. You could go straight up like a battle movie, like Dunkirk or say The Longest Day. You can tell these little stories like The Zookeeper's Wife. There's so many angles that you can go when talking about World War II. But where Eagles Dare is different is that it also combines the elements of a spy movie. It basically tells the story of these two GIs played by Richard Burton and Clint Eastwood who have to go save a captured Allied general in this very secure fortress and in the, I want to say the Swiss Alps, but it's in the mountains, in the Bavarian mountains. And this movie is this movie is very long. It's 2.5 hours, so it's definitely one you have to really be prepared to experience for. But at the same time, this is a very criminally underrated war movie. It's got really great action scenes. It's got really great like spying scenes. This is Clint Eastwood just before he really hits his peak. I think he had just gotten done with the spaghetti westerns and was really starting to get into his own. And Richard Burton in the middle of his prime, and he was doing a lot of good stuff. And really the best part of the movie is when they get this general and they have to get back to the airfield and get out, and they do it in a snowplow. I'm just going to leave it at that because the rest is just chaos, and I just love it. And at the end of the day, this is definitely a very underrated World War II movie, and if you haven't seen it, do check it out.
I have to say, I never even heard of it. Not that I hadn't even just seen it. I had never heard of this movie until you put it on the list. So that's always what's the great thing about the show is that what we
Very,
do.
very underrated score as well,
Oh
especially in
yeah.
the beginning where it's like it's got this very menacing like beat to it because this mission the movie does a great job of showing that this mission is like the worst case scenario. Like if these two men get caught, they will be disavowed. It's like a Mission Impossible movie.
Mm-hmm.
Get caught, we will not claim you. So
Yeah.
it's either they got to get their mark or they're gonna die trying, literally.
Cool. That sounds good. I'll have to check that out. So my next pick is actually I love Anna Green Gables. Another hard left, I guess. I love Anna Green Gables, but I did not like Anne with an E. And so my friend Amber and I, we watched Anne with an E, and that's actually how we started the Hallmarkies podcast because we disliked it so much that we decided to start talking about Hallmark movies instead. And but I kind of cleansed my palate. I watched this version of Anna Green Gables from 2016. And this is a very sweet, simple version. Like it doesn't have that much of a budget. It's pretty small, but it covers most of the bases of the story. And it has Martin Sheen playing Matthew, which he's a pro, so he did a good job. And it's if you like Anna Green Gables, this does not get up to the levels of the 1985 version, but it's a pretty solid version, I would say.
Just the knowledge of Martin Sheen being in something like Apocalypse Now, where he almost died of a heart attack, and also being in a Hallmark version of Anne of Green Gables. Like, the dude's got range. That's all
Yeah.
I'm going to say.
That's right. But yeah, this is a pretty fun little version of Anne of Green Gables. It covers all the main parts of the book, and I think that most readers will be pretty happy with it. Like I said, it's obviously on a pretty low budget, so you can feel that some places, but yeah, people should check it out. So what is your next pick?
So my next pick is from 2016, and this is like in that buffer zone between like late 2016, early 17, but I just say 2016. It's called The Infiltrator. This was directed by Brad Furman, who also directed The Lincoln Lawyer. I've recommended that movie in the past. And The Infiltrator is based on a true story. It's based on the story of a U.S. Customs agent named Robert Mazer, and I'm glad I wrote his name down, who learns of a money trail that could possibly lead to Pablo Escobar, who is pretty well known as like a pretty big drug kingpin of the mid-1980s. And so Mazur goes underground and undercover as a man who is looking to get Escobar's services, and this eventually leads to Escobar's eventual arrest. I love these true stories like this. It's one of those things where it's like, this couldn't have possibly happened, and yet somehow it did. I just actually watched the Courier with Benedict Cumberbatch last night. It was fantastic. It was yet another one of those. This actually happened, and it turns out, yes, it did. And that goes far and away for me with The Infiltrator. You definitely know where it's going, if maybe in terms of like, okay, it definitely is going to lead to Escobar's arrest. There's going to be some marriage turmoil between Robert Mazur and his wife. That does happen, and he can only tell her so much. You all probably know where this is headed. It's like a train ride. You know where it's going, but thankfully, Brad Furman's a pretty good director, and so he at least makes the train ride interesting, I suppose. The movie stars Bryan Cranston. He's consistently great in most of the things that he's in, and it's no different here. This was around the time when he was still riding off of the Breaking Bad high that he was on, and he was just getting offers everywhere. Like, seriously, in 2012, he must have been in like 5 or 6 movies. Like, it was crazy. And he's the best part of the movie. He has to keep his cover all the time everywhere, and it's not easy, but he does it. There are other actors in here as well, like John Leguizamo. He's consistently great in most of the things that he is in, but this is really the Bryan Cranston show. And at the end of the day, this is yet another one of those true stories that I just found endlessly fascinating. If you haven't seen it, do check it out.
Yeah, I remember hearing about it, but I'm glad you brought it back to my attention because I definitely forgotten about it. But it sounded like a pretty good film.
Yeah, it's also a nice portrait of what the 80s looked like in terms of like the war on drugs, I guess, if you want to call it.
Oh, yeah.
It's an 80s film, but it's not like everybody's wearing leg warmers and listening to Cyndi Lauper and watching Hulk Hogan face Andre the Giant and stuff like that. It's enough
Right.
80s to let you know it's the 80s, specifically the clothes and the hair, but it's not like in your face about it. I like that. I like the spirit of it.
Sounds good. Well, my third choice is moving up to the 90s. This is 1993, and it is the film adaptation of the Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan, the novels by Amy Tannen. And I really enjoyed the novel, and they did a very good job updating it to motion picture. And this was pretty landmark for its time to have an all Chinese cast, all Chinese or Chinese American cast. And it's something you didn't even really see again until we had something like Crazy Rich Asians, and which is crazy that it took that long for a major mainstream motion picture. But this is it's a good film. It's about mothers and daughters, and the mothers have this this club where they make investments in different things called the Joy Luck Club, and it tells the stories of the mothers in China, how they came over to the United States, and then also tells the stories of the young people and them trying to get along with their mothers. And I have to say, I think all the stuff with the older women is way more compelling than the drama of the younger women, and that's true in the book as well. But I think it's still definitely worth watching. Some really good performances, and if you are a sibling or have a mother, I think that you'll be able to relate to this film, and so it's a really good one.
I'd always heard about this one. It was one of those where if I was scrolling through HBO, it'd be like the Joy Luck Club. That sounds like, and I would see it nonstop. It would get like serious HBO like airplay, like especially late at night.
And I was just thinking about it because they had a documentary about Amy Tan at Sundance, and so they talked a lot about the movie on there.
Yeah, this was directed by Wayne Wong, who also directed Last Holiday, which is a movie that I also recommended here with Queen Latifah.
So good. I love it too. Yeah, he makes really satisfying, entertaining films and that have a heart to them. So that's my jam if you're talking about me. So what is your next pick?
So my next choice is my. Let me start that over. So 3, 2. So my next choice is a bit of a hard left again. This is talking about like an early '90s like film about mothers and daughters to bit of a mid '60s over the top movie from the guy who invented the Pink Panther. It's The Great Race. This was released in 1965. It was directed by Blake Edwards, who he would go on to do other things, but is primarily known for creating the Pink Panther cartoons as well as heavily involved in the Pink Panther movies, like The Pink Panther and Pink Panther Strikes Back and Shot in the Dark and all that. And this movie stars Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon, who I think other than Walter Matthau, like Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis were just like among the best comedy duos ever. Like Lemmon was one of the all-timers, like in terms of comedic actors. He was one of the greats. And this movie is about, well, a great race between many different people, but it primarily focuses on two drivers: the great Leslie, played by Tony Curtis, and Professor Fate, played by Jack Lemmon. And this is one of those cross-country races where they start in London and they end in New York City, and hijinks ensue. That may sound boring, but I'm not doing it justice. This is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen, and that falls directly at the feet of the three main actors: Jack Lemmon, Tony Curtis, and Natalie Wood. And this is a seriously funny movie, even by 2021 standards. Like I said, Jack Lemmon just has fantastic comedic timing. He was one of the best. Like he was normally good as a great straight man, but here he's the foil, and he does a great job. And Tony Curtis is the straight man, and he was awesome in Some Like It Hot, and he's just as good in The Great Race as well. And Natalie Wood, she was taken from us far too soon, because I believe she was a one-of-a-kind talent, and just Lord only knows what she would have done if she hadn't passed on. But again, that's another story for another time. And this definitely has its more over-the-top qualities, but that's honestly what gives the movie its charm. It's definitely a movie that would not be made today, not for any reason other than people would think like, oh, this is just plain old silly. But if you have not seen it, I do recommend checking it out. And one more fun fact before we do move on: this series actually inspired one of my favorite cartoon series of all time, The Wacky Races. And two of the main characters in that, Peter Perfect and Dick Dastardly, were both based on the great Leslie and Professor Fate, respectively.
Yeah, I have to admit, I've never heard of this one either. This was new to me, and it sounds delightful, so I'm definitely gonna have to check it out. It sounds great.
One of my favorite lines in the movie is when Leslie and Fate are like 1 and 2 next to each other, and they've got to cross this icy terrain, and both of their cars are stuck on this tremendous iceberg, and the iceberg is melting. And so Leslie is like, and so Professor Fate is like, we are sinking. And Leslie's like, don't tell us that, we already know. And Fate's like, oh, okay, I'll shut up about it. I'll wait till the water gets to my upper lip. Then I'll say something again. I honestly...
It sounds kind of, it's Mad World-ish, kind of, a little.
Yeah, that's same cut from the same cloth, if you will.
Because I really like It's Mad World as well. Cool, that sounds great. So my next pick is a small film that you might not have heard of. It's perfect for this show. It's called A Simple Twist of Fate, and this is from 1994, and it is an adaptation of George Eliot's novel Silas Marner, and it's one of her shorter novels, but it's done in modern day, and it's actually adapted by Steve Martin, who is the star of the film. And it's about this miserly man who is isolated from the world, and He just all he cares about is collecting coins, collecting money. And in one day, he ends up getting this daughter that he has to take care of, this little girl. And at first, he's very grumpy about it, and then, of course, she slowly starts to win him over. But it's a very sweet little movie. So, and he's just very cynical. He doesn't trust anybody, and just this little girl starts to kind of wear him down. It's similar to like Heidi in that way, which I recommended on a previous episode.
Kind of sounds like Steve Martin's character from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but with just one daughter.
Maybe, yeah. Except for he's even more sort of isolated and doesn't want to leave his house, kind of a thing. But yeah, it's a cute little movie. I think you'd like it.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to look into it.
Mm-hmm. So, what is your next pick?
So my next choice is from 2001, and this is a movie that I think got a bit more traction because Inside Out came out in 2015, and there was a large amount of people who were either comparing it to Herman's Head or this movie I'm going to be talking about. It's Osmosis Jones. This was directed by the Farrelly brothers, and even though they did direct movie 43, Peter Farrelly would go on to direct Green Book, which I believe won him an Oscar. I know it won Best Picture, but I don't know if he won individually an Oscar.
No, not for directing, I don't believe. But I think he actually might have won for screenplay, now that I think about it. I could be wrong. I can't remember. That
does make sense, but regardless, this movie tells the story of, well, it's really hard to describe, but it basically, this movie all takes place in the body of Bill Murray, like Bill Murray's character at least. And it all revolves around a cop named Osmosis Jones, who is a white blood cell. And in biology, white blood cells fight off diseases. They're basically like the police force of the human body. So it fits for this movie. And Osmosis Jones gets a new partner named Drix, and he's a pill. And he's voiced by David Hyde Pierce, who I believe was Niles in Frasier, if my memory serves me right. Mm-hmm. And there is a sickness going in Bill Murray's character's body named Thrax, voiced by Lawrence Fishburne. And Ozzy and Drix have to navigate a very bumbling mayor, voiced by William Shatner, and a variety of other characters. I never saw this in theaters. My dad showed it to me at home one day, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was just the concept of all of this taking place in someone's body. It just, I don't know. There's something about that just was just so many possibilities surrounding it, and about how certain systems work, and how like action scenes happening in Frank's body actually adversely affect him on the outside. This movie definitely has its silly moments, but in a good way. But there's also a pretty touching storyline between Bill Murray and his daughter in the movie. And I won't go too deep into spoilers, but let's just say it gets pretty harrowing near the end. And I don't know, it was just really good stuff. And I won't say that this movie is like totally overlooked. Everyone I talk about, like say, hey, Osmosis Jones, be like, oh yeah, I remember that. So there's definitely a group of people who remember this movie. However, there's also a lot of people who either liked the Body movie, please, but this is secretly it's secretly a pretty good movie, and it definitely answered a lot of questions about my body when I was growing up. Let's just say when I was riddled with acne, I'm like, wow, the clubs are expanding.
Yeah, I have never seen this one. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. You definitely heard about it when Inside Out was coming out, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, when you do it for obscure animation, have me on. We'll talk.
Okay. That sounds like a good deal. All right, very good. Well, my last pick is another hard left, and this comes from the world of Hallmark, but it's way back Hallmark. It's from 2003, so way back.
Like in the prehistoric days of Hallmark.
That's right. And it's called Love Comes Softly. And I really like this movie. It inspired a whole series of movies after it. There's like 9 or 10 of them. And this first one stars Katherine Heigl, and she plays a woman who is going out west in the like 1850s, 1860s. And her this is not a spoiler. It's at the very beginning. Her husband passes away suddenly, and so she needs to figure out how is she going to survive. What is she going to do? And so there's a man who has a little girl, and he makes a offer to her. He says, well, if you can stay with me, but in order for us to do that, we have to get married, and then we can be married through the year, and then once the stage comes back, we can get it annulled or divorced, and then you can go back then, but we can help each other survive through the winter, and you can help my little girl have a mom for at least a year, kind of a thing. So they make this deal, and it's obviously an extreme marriage of convenience, but as they get to know each other more, they slowly grow to fall in love with each other, of course, as you'd expect. But it's very romantic, it's very sweet, it's faith-filled. There's definitely a faith element in this, when them trying to understand why God would do this to them and take away their spouses, and why bad things happen to good people, and I think it's done very well, and the little girl's cute and ornery, and it's really good. I think this is a very solid movie.
Yeah, that's the universal question, isn't it? When we ask God, is like, why do bad things happen to good people?
Yeah.
It's like the age-old adage of smokers live till 90, but then there's someone who's pure of heart who dies of cancer at 35. It's like, how is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the big question that nobody has the full answers, but give you some answers in this, and some story. And so this is a pretty good faith-based film, I think, and it's a pretty good Hallmark movie, and it's a pretty good love story, pretty good Western, all of those things, elements. I think it's all well done. And a lot of people hate Katherine Heigl, but I think she's perfectly fine here, perfectly serviceable. And Dale Midkiff is the male lead, and he's good. And so yeah, if you like things like Little House on the Prairie, or I don't know, just those kinds of wholesome frontier kind of stories, then I think you'll really enjoy this.
Yeah, I remember she did this movie for the love of money, or something, like, or One for the Money, and then she like disappeared off the face of the earth. It's like, I wonder what
Mm-hmm.
happened.
Yeah, she just did a series for Netflix. I didn't get to finish. I watched one episode, but then I just had so much going on when they sent it to me. Firefly Lane. I think that she took a break because she had a lot of children. She has like 4 children or something. So
Oh, fair enough.
that
Fair enough.
they can get in the way. Those
Those
children.
those pesky kids.
Yeah. Anyway, so what is your last pick?
So my last pick is from 2002, and it is an adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo, starring Jim Caviezel and Guy Pearce. This is based on the legendary story written by Alexandre Dumas, who also wrote, among other things, The Three Musketeers, and that's the only book that I could think of off the top of my head. But if you've read The Count of Monte Cristo, this movie will pretty much does that. It's about a man named Edmond Dantes who is framed for a crime that he did not commit by his friend named Ferdinand, and he is cast to the island of Monte Cristo, and he's pretty much the only one there. And for years he stays there and languishes in this prison until he escapes. And not only does he escape, he stumbles upon massive amounts of riches and uses this wealth to plan his revenge against Ferdinand. I remember watching this because my dad was like, "Hey, you remember me reading you The Count of Monte Cristo, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And it's like, "Well, watch this." And so we did, and it was great. Jim Caviezel is one of those actors that I think doesn't get a ton of work nowadays, but subtly, when he is there, he's the best part of anything that he's in. He primarily does like a lot of faith-based stuff. Like I remember 2 or 3 years ago, he did a movie called Paul, Apostle of Christ, and faith-based movies tend to be very bad. And I'm not saying that as I'm saying that as a man of faith.
Mm-hmm.
Watching 90% of PureFlix movies, it just is like, God, like just
Yeah.
save me from this. But Paul Apostle of Christ was really good, and Jim Caviezel is just he's supremely talented. He's one of the best actors that I think nobody really talks about. And Guy Pearce, I mean, is Guy Pearce. If you need someone to play like a very prickish bad guy, you call on Guy Pearce. It doesn't matter how big or how small, Guy Pearce will always be there. And there's a lot of stuff to remember about this movie. There's the Count's introduction where he has this big elaborate party and he walks out and he's like, "I am the Count of Monte Cristo," and people are just like, "Oh, who is this guy?" And that scene is done very well. This was directed by Kevin Reynolds, who directed Waterworld, which I like, though like 90% of people hate it. And he also
Mm-hmm.
directed Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which was like the biggest thing in the early 90s, but then nobody talked about it except for Alan Rickman. But I thought he did a really good job directing this, and I think it's a pretty dang good adaptation of Dumas' work. It's better than like half of the Three Musketeers movies that have been made, especially the Paul W.S. Anderson one, which, oh, God, don't remind me.
Woo! That one's rough.
Whoa,
Yeah,
Nelly.
I actually almost had this on my list. I was debating between, do I do the Anna Green Gables, do I do Count of Monte Cristo? But I am so happy when I saw it on your list because I really enjoy it too. It's really fun. If you like Pirates of the Caribbean or things like that, then you'll enjoy this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's a good pick. All right, well, we did it. Hoopla. It provided some good suggestions, I think.
Yeah, we showed everyone the hoopla around
Yeah,
Hoopla.
that's right.
Bringing everything full circle, that is my
Yes.
job.
So let us know what you've been watching on Hoopla and what you think of our recommendations. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And Ryan, where can people find you?
They can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at RyanCam20. And there's, of course, my YouTube channel, which is just called RyanCam. We're recording this on a Sunday, which means that my first reaction to Porco Rosso dropped. It's one of Studio Ghibli's more underrated movies. I had a lot of fun watching it. And throughout this week, I'll be dropping AFI project videos for Raiders of the Lost Ark and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And then this coming Sunday will be my first reaction to the next Studio Ghibli film, Ocean Waves. And then the next Sunday, April 4th, it's going to be a very special video on my channel because Rachel and Durban over at Durbania have been very kind to lend their services in order to review The Prince of Egypt in honor of Easter Sunday. And so that's going to be a lot of fun to record, and that I'm looking forward to it wholeheartedly. So if you haven't subscribed over on my channel, please do. I'm so happy with where it's going and where it's going to go. I put a lot of time and effort into it. So yeah, check me out if you haven't.
Yes, you all should definitely check out. It's going to be so fun. I love that movie so much. So I'm very excited to talk about it. And yeah, you can follow me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So make sure to check all of that out. It's so much fun. Please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on iTunes, please leave us your ratings and reviews. We really, really appreciate those. And also, consider becoming a patron. We are so grateful for our patrons. And then we also have our merch store, which has tons of fun designs. So we'd love you to take a look over there. So thanks so much, everybody. And we'll talk to you later. Bye, everyone.
Bye.